Thank you all for joining us this morning. Politics is driving the agenda in far too many of our federal agencies. Don't believe me, just read the Durham report from a couple days ago, where they outline what exactly took, where you had the FBI and the Justice Department, no predicate, no evidence, no probable cause whatsoever. But today it's worse. Today it's worse. It's not just going after presidential candidates, presidential campaigns. Today it's the American people. If you're a parent attending a school board meeting, you're a pro-lifer praying at a clinic, or you're a Catholic simply going to Mass, you are a target of the government, target of the FBI. And maybe even worse than all that, if you're one of the thousands of good employees, brave whistleblowers who's willing to come forward, if you're one of these folks willing to come forward and talk about what's going on out there, you get attacked. They will try to crush you. And today we're going to hear in a hearing, just less than an hour from now, we will hear from 3 of those individuals. We have talked to over 24 whistleblowers. We have interviewed several of those individuals, and 3 of them are willing to come forward today and testify in our hearing. You all have a report that outlines what we've uncovered, what these whistleblowers have brought to us. And today, as I said, you're going to get to hear from 3 of them. You will hear how they come and talked about those very things I just mentioned, the school board's issue, the Catholic memo, this effort to inflate and make every case seem as if it's some domestic violent extremism case. But you'll also hear about how the FBI retaliated against these guys. How when Mr. O'Boyle was moving his family from Kansas to Virginia, they kept his belongings locked up, wouldn't let him get access to his kids' clothes. They had a newborn, all the things they did to these, wouldn't let Mr. Friend get access to his firearm training records so he could get employment. The FBI's admitted that they were wrong to do that. So you're going to hear from them today, and we're looking forward to that. We think it will be a powerful hearing, powerful testimony from some great Americans who have served our country and been retaliated against because they were willing to come give us information, valuable information about the targeting of American people. And with that, I'd like to turn over to one of our great members, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for your leadership. The FBI has been victimized by political capture, and that politicization has manifested in the targeting of Americans who never deserved to have this government weaponized against them. Whistleblowers saw those bad acts. They stepped forward, and they were retaliated against and crushed as a consequence. And our work today will build on the work of Special Counsel Durham, who said recently that at the FBI there is confirmation bias, an overwillingness to rely on information from individuals connected to political opponents and action without appropriate objectivity. One of the whistleblowers we'll hear from today served in the United States Marine Corps, served as a local cop, Garrett O'Boyle, and this is his testimony regarding that political capture.
Do you believe that the FBI has become political?
I do. I think most people out in the field try to avoid that politicization of the agency, which is good, but it's gotten to a point, it seems to me, that it's like a cancerous point where the FBI has let itself become enveloped in this politicization and weaponization that I don't know how to even begin to fix it.
One group that saw that weaponization work against them were Catholics. The FBI field office in Richmond put out a memo saying that violent extremists would find the Catholic ideology attractive and would attempt to connect with Catholic adherents, that extremists would show an interest in Catholic congregations over the next 12 to 24 months leading up to the presidential election. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? And the memo calls for the FBI to develop sources within Catholic congregations to try to obtain information about those folks. Another group that saw weaponization turn against them, parents who attended school board meetings. You'll hear today from Steve Friend, who worked for the FBI and actually found himself ridiculed at his own FBI office because he too was a parent who attended a school board meeting. This is Steve Friend.
given your law enforcement background, does knowing that you could be investigated by the FBI for speaking up at your child's school board meeting chill parents from exercising their First Amendment rights?
Yes.
And you said you had attended a school board meeting and you were nervous that you could be under federal investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, my colleagues teased me about it.
Americans who were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th who committed no crimes, who simply attended a rally, also saw the FBI weaponized against them. George Hill was an FBI employee working out of the Boston field office, and he talks about the pressure that the Washington field office was putting on Boston, and when they tried to get predicate evidence, they couldn't get it for a very interesting reason. This is George Hill.
Joe Bonavolante said, no, we're not opening up cases on people who went to a rally. And I forgot a key part. The SSA for CT2 said, happy to do it. Show us where they were inside the Capitol, and we'll look into it. To which WFO said, we can't show you those videos unless you can tell us the exact time and place those individuals were inside the Capitol. To which the SSA responded back, and I was privy to these conversations firsthand, why can't you show us, why can't you just send us, give us access to the 11,000 hours of video that's available? Because there may be UC's undercover officers or CHS's confidential human sources on those videos whose identity we need to protect.
Marcus Allen, an FBI analyst who did work around evidence, sharing it with folks, he saw videos that concerned him about the federal government's own involvement in January 6th. Here's Marcus Allen.
Video to me indicated potential problems with the investigation as far as informants were concerned, and our organization's potential forthrightness about utilization of informants there on that day. That might have some impact on our cases and the subjects that we were looking up, and then just a general awareness overall for the investigation as a whole, that there might have been some kind of potential federal involvement with the activities on January 6th, and I thought it was important enough that it warranted our attention.
So much of the good work happening at the FBI is throughout this country, and a lot of the rot, the committee has learned, emerges out of headquarters and out of the Washington field office. Garrett O'Boyle described the conflict that existed as the Washington field office put pressure on other field offices around the country to engage in law enforcement work without predication. This is Mr. O'Boyle.
Did WFO pressure other field offices to keep January 6th cases open or open cases?
I would say they pressured us to open cases to some degree. One example that I have personally, I made this is one of my protective disclosures, so I'll just touch on it a little bit. But I received a lead about someone based on an anonymous tip, and in law enforcement, anonymous tips don't hold very much weight, especially without evidence that you can corroborate pretty easily. I wasn't able to corroborate anything they said, even after speaking with the person they alleged potential criminal behavior of. While I'm trying to figure all that out, I get another lead from the same agent who sent me that lead, and they essentially tried to get me to violate policy or law.
Trying to get people to break the law without sufficient predication is a weaponization of our government, and all Americans suffer when resources are misallocated, when stats are padded. Following 9/11, the FBI set up all of these terrorism entities to look outward at people abroad who might seek to harm our country. But a lot of those authorities were turned inward against our own people, and the result was stat padding for the purpose of FBI officials trying to convince Congress that the violent extremism threat was more enhanced than it indeed was, and we got critical testimony on that point also from Mr. O'Boyle.
As a DT agent, I encountered similar stat padding or case bolstering truth be told, it was one case. Like, but the FBI had me open up 4 different cases because they had me open a case for every individual that I had a articulable factual basis that there may have been potential federal law being violated. Where, like, on a criminal case, say you're working like a gang, which this case was, I guess, like a militia. If you're working like a gang, you have a case open on the gang, and you have a sub-file for each person in it. Like, if, you know, John Doe 1, 2, and 3, they all have their own sub-file. Or in my case, John Doe 1, 2, 3, and 4 all had their own separate case, because then the FBI can, from my perspective, the FBI can come back to Congress and say, look at all the domestic terrorism we've investigated. But really, I was working one case, but the FBI can then say, well, he actually had 4. So we, you should give us more money because look at how big of a threat all this domestic terrorism is.
Padding the stats to try to showcase a problem that is overemphasized, political capture and political infection of our law enforcement. These brave patriots spoke up about it. They'll be testifying to our committee today, and my colleagues will now discuss some of the intense and depraved retaliation that they had to experience, and I'd recognize my colleague from Florida, Kat Kamick, to share some of those thoughts with us.
Well, good morning. I really can't say that this today, what you are hearing, what you will be hearing more of in this hearing in the coming hours, it couldn't be overstated how important this is. I think Representative Gates, you just laid out very succinctly why this is so critical. You know, I know a lot of people back home are wondering, you know, we hear about this weaponization, you guys get up here, you investigate, but nothing ever seems to happen. Think about this for a minute, though. Why this is so critical that we are investigating the weaponization of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. As was pointed out, if you are a parent and you attend a school board meeting, there could be an FBI agent in the parking lot scribbling down your license plate number. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually testimony that these brave whistleblowers have given us. That is not America that I know. If you are a Catholic and you want to attend Catholic Mass, perhaps there is an informant inside reporting on what you are doing inside. This is the thing that novels are written about. This is spy movies. If you think about the FBI whistleblowers who have come forward bravely, this today will demonstrate the pattern that the FBI has used in retaliating against them and their families, because their families have served just as honorably alongside them. These men have served our country, both in law enforcement and in the United States military. Furthermore, as we have seen, these are decorated individuals who were led down a path only to find themselves left out in the cold, iced out. And this was by design. When the FBI was questioned about this, the word that kept coming back was, it's a coincidence. It's a coincidence that they leave these people in a position where they cannot seek outside employment, they cannot access their personal belongings, despite the fact that these men have served their country. But even worse, the loyalty to the nation has been questioned. This is truly the weaponization of government. Whether you are the President of the United States, as we have seen in the Durham report, whether or not you are a parent concerned about your child's education, whether you are just someone who wants to go to Mass, you could find yourself a target of the FBI. This FBI certainly knows no bounds, and we are seeing that in every single interview, in every single piece of evidence that we uncover. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but I would like to reiterate what what Representative Matt Gaetz said earlier. This is not about the good men and women of the FBI, the rank and file agents who do their job honorably. No, this is about the political corruption at the very top that has seeped down into every field office across this nation. If you don't toe the company line, you might find yourself a target of the FBI, whether you are an outsider or an insider. And that is what we seek to uncover. One of my colleagues here today will outlined some of the key retaliation points, so I don't want to belabor that point. But I do want to say to those that are concerned that we investigate and there is no subsequent action, everyone standing behind me agrees. We have to present the evidence, we have to deliver that evidence, and then we have to take action to make sure that there are consequences, but also that this never happens again. That is why in this particular case, I am so glad that the treatment of these whistleblowers is being referred to by the U.S. Office of Special Counsel and the Inspector General for further investigation. And I would encourage you all today in today's hearing to witness the treatment that these whistleblowers will receive from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle who will seek to discredit them at every turn. I would like you to keep in mind the contrast during the January 6th testimony of how their whistleblowers were treated. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague from the great state of Wyoming, Representative Harriet Hageman.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everyone. Whistleblowers are protected by law, and the reason is simple and understandable. We must be able to count on disclosures from rank-and-file employees in order to conduct our oversight and hold people accountable for wrongdoing. The whistleblowers we will be hearing from today have identified and described egregious abuse, misallocation of law enforcement resources, and misconduct within the leadership ranks of the FBI. In short, the leadership in the FBI is politically corrupt. And they are ruining our flagship in law enforcement agency by targeting politicians, parents, and ordinary citizens. The eye of Sauron, in other words, has been turned on the American people, and it is a frightening time in which we live. These FBI whistleblowers have come forward at great personal and professional expense. They have faced retaliation from the FBI for their disclosures, which have blocked them from working inside and outside of the FBI. And then when they expose such abuses, they themselves are subject to abuse by congressional Democrats who selectively leak or write reports attempting to discredit them while ignoring the substance of what they say. Under Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, the FBI and the DOJ are broken. It is politically weaponized against the American people, using constitutionally protected rights as a predicate to investigate and surveil people. They target conservatives inside and outside of the organization, and they are crushing anyone who dares to report their wrongdoing. Again, this is exactly why Congress needs whistleblowers to conduct oversight and course correct these abusive federal agencies. Sadly, what we will see from the Democrats today will not be a focus on the substance of what these brave men have exposed, or a discussion of how to protect our constitutional rights and institutions from the tyrants who are running these agencies. Instead, what we will see is a deflection. They will call our witnesses names. They will scream MAGA and extremist at the top of their lungs. They will pound the tables. They will continue to gaslight us about Russia, 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 because that's all that Adam Schiff knows what to say. But make no mistake, they are simply trying to cover up the unforgivable and the indefensible. The creation of a two-tier justice system based on political beliefs and the corruption of our political elites. I encourage the American people, and I encourage you, the press, to start listening, to start reading, to start understanding what has been exposed in our government. And then I encourage you to go watch the movie The Lives of Others, because that is where we're headed if we don't correct what is happening within the FBI and the DOJ. We thank these whistleblowers for their service to our nation, service which includes their integrity and bravery to stand up and expose wrongdoing. They are the ones standing on the wall to make sure that we can protect the greatest republic that's ever existed in the history of the world. They're fighting back against the people who will tear it down. With that, I would introduce Mike Johnson from Louisiana.
Thank you. I'll be brief and summarize this because we're going to get to your questions. But let me just say this simply. America works because we're a nation of laws, not of men. The rule of law is incredibly important to maintain a constitutional republic, and it's in jeopardy right now because when you have the Department of Justice and the FBI itself engaged in the activities that we're talking about here today, it alarms the American people. They understand that our institutions are crumbling. The people's faith in our institutions, our system of justice itself, is at an all-time low. It's because of the things that we're highlighting here this morning. Our constituents, and I mean millions and millions of Americans, are deeply concerned about the things that we're talking about here today. They've seen this. And when they found out that parents who showed up at school board meetings were labeled as domestic terrorists, when they found out that the FBI is trying to recruit informants and spies inside traditional Catholic congregations, when they found out that the FBI was meeting regularly with social media platforms over the last 2 election cycles to censor and silence conservative candidates and voices online, when they find out that patriots stand up to blow the whistle on this, and they're being retaliated against by those who are engaged in this corruption, it alarms them, and it should. So we hear back when I'm at home and I'm doing town halls, all of us who are talking to our constituents, average, everyday, hardworking Americans and families, and they say, why can't you guys stop it? Why can't somebody be indicted? Why can't they be put on trial in a court of law? Well, we're just the Congress. We have a solemn responsibility of oversight. That is exactly what we are engaging in the Weaponization Committee, and it's sad that it's come to this. But I often have to explain back home, we don't have the ability to indict anybody or put them on trial in a court. We're just members of Congress. What we do have the responsibility of doing, and what we do have the power of doing, is putting this on view of the American public, putting it, the facts, I guess, on trial in the court of public opinion. And so that's what this is about. We want these brave whistleblowers to come forward and tell their stories, and it is compelling information. You're going to be shocked by some of the things you hear. But here's something else you need to know. As Chairman Jordan said, we've got a couple dozen whistleblowers. We've only got a few who are able to come forward and put their name and their face to this. You know why? Because the rest of them are fearful that their careers will be ended, that their families will be put in jeopardy, like you're going to hear this morning, that all these things would happen to them as well. And so we respect that. We're not trying to urge or compel anybody to come forward because we know what's at stake for them, and that is frightening. So we're hopeful that at the end of this, we can bring about reforms, that we can change what's happening here to ensure that the kind of abuses that you're seeing here never happen again. And watch, as was said just a moment ago, watch. You're in a hearing today, watch what the Democrats do. They're going to come out, they're going to try to discredit these men, these brave patriots. They're going to try to say that they're not trustworthy. But I think you can evaluate that for yourself when you hear from them. See some of the video highlights, but see in person today and hear their heart and how they're grieved for America as we are, and that we've got to bring about these changes. So with that, I'll yield back to Chairman Jordan, and we'll take a few questions.
Is the company willing to withhold any funding for any of the various FBI needs and initiatives to force any change in behavior across the organization, starting with the WFO or the headquarters?
I believe the answer to that question is yes. I'll go here and then I'll go back.
The FBI put out a letter yesterday explaining why the security clearances for Marcus Allen and Steve Friend were officially revoked earlier this month.
Mm-hmm.
And it details that Marcus Allen raised questions that whether or not January 6th should be investigated, raises that Marcus Allen didn't have any, claimed there was no open source information on an individual who was at the Capitol on January 6th, a separate individual, found that person actually assaulted a Capitol police officer, and Steve Friend was entering FBI space and removed and took information on an unauthorized removed flash drive. These are details that the FBI explains why these security clearances of these two individuals were going to be.
Marcus Allen had a security clearance for 20 years, did 2 tours in Iraq, decorated veteran of our armed services, and you'll get to hear from him today. And it doesn't, frankly, surprise me that the FBI puts out this letter the night before we're going to have a hearing. This is the same FBI who, as I think all our speakers said, same FBI who said it's appropriate to put snitches inside the Catholic Church. It's appropriate to use the Patriot Act against parents and develop a snitch line that people can report them. And these guys, Mr. O'Boyle's the guy who came forward and told us about the 25 individuals, parents who were investigated by the FBI. So it didn't surprise us. We actually expected it. We were surprised it took them that long to put out this letter about these guys. But you'll get to hear from these individuals today. These brave Americans who are willing to come forward. Understand what the Durham report said. The FBI failed in its fundamental mission of fidelity to the law. They didn't follow the law. These three guys who are going to come testify today, their conscience, their duty to the Constitution compelled them to come forward in fidelity to the law. And you'll get to hear from them here in less than an hour. I hear, and then I'll come back up. We'll take a couple more.
I know you and your colleagues have said that there's corruption in the leadership of the FBI, but I think that that memo targeting Catholics in the Latin Mass came from the Richmond field office. So
Came from the I still think that I think the vast majority, and our investigation shows the vast majority of the agents are good people doing their job. The Richmond field office obviously had a problem. How 5 people could sign off on that memo, how the chief division counsel, supposedly some lawyer who went to law school and probably had a course on the Constitution, could sign off on that memo astounds me. But they did. Now, the good news is a whistleblower brought it to our attention and the FBI's rescinded it. But I always ask the question, if it hadn't been brought to our attention, if it wasn't for the brave whistleblower, would they really have rescinded it? I don't know. I'd like to think they would. So, again, we think the vast majority of agents are doing a good job. It is problems, as Mr. Gates pointed out, and as our whistleblowers told us in their interviews, the problem is in the Washington field office here and at the headquarters. Last one.
You're talking a lot about, and the point of this press conference, the point of the hearing is to talk about how the FBI is politicized, but do you think it's appropriate for some of these whistleblowers, including 2 who will be at your hearing today, to be paid by one of the former president's closest advisors, Kash Patel, who's active?
They got a family. How are they supposed to feed their family? 450 days. The FBI has kept Mr. O'Boyle in limbo, where he can't work without pay. He's got 4 kids. He was selected to come to this special unit they were forming here in Virginia. He moves his family, and the day he gets here, they say, hey, we're suspending your clearance. And they won't let him get access to his furniture, his clothes, and he's got a 2-week-old newborn child. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Of course they're gonna do whatever they can to feed their family, and I don't fault them for that.
And just one more thing. You have said, and your colleagues have said, that today in the hearing, the Democrats are going to undercut the credibility of these witnesses. Can you just explain broadly for our understanding how the committee, how your staff vets whistleblowers, generally speaking, including the ones who will appear today?
They come to us. If they're willing to sit for an interview, they'll sit for an interview. If they're willing to testify publicly, we'll let them testify publicly. That's what's happening today. But some of them, frankly, were willing to sit for an interview, and they don't want to testify publicly. They saw what the Democrats did a few weeks ago, where the Democrats selective leaks from their interview to the press. And guess what? The New York Times, the Washington Post, and Rolling Stone all had to issue corrections because what the Democrats told them was not accurate. So when a whistleblower sees all that, they get nervous. I don't blame them. Anyway, we got to get to the committee here. It starts in a few minutes. Thank you all very much.
A Russian man claiming to hold top-level secrets about Russian advanced bombers has just turned up at the U.S. southern border, seeking asylum. The man claims to have been an engineer at a production facility over in the city of Kazan, and he says that he possesses top-secret information about the White Swan Tu-160, which is the most advanced bomber in the Russian arsenal. U.S. border officials, they interviewed the man, and they determined that his story was in fact credible and eventually passed him off to the FBI, who are still in the process of interrogating him right now. However, analysts have pointed out that the fact that the story was even leaked to the public is an indication that perhaps the American government is encouraging other Russians who also hold top-level secrets to also escape to America. And if you thought that was interesting, well then you should click on that button below this video and check out Epoch TV, one of the best no-censorship video platforms on the internet. On there you will find awesome programs like American Thought Leaders.
We've now been, for 2 years, trying to obtain the unredacted emails. We're down to the last 50 pages. So that's where all the incriminating evidence is.
Crossroads, one of the big things happening right now is what's taking place with Russia and China.
Counterpunch.
You will see information you've never seen anywhere else.
Facts matter. I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free. As well as a plethora of great documentaries, wholesome movies that you can enjoy with your whole family.
If I reach 1 hour, I accomplish something.
Cooking programs, and my absolute favorite, programs about traditional art and traditional music, which can honestly uplift your mood and fill you with hope for the future. And the best thing about Epoch TV, at least in my opinion, is that there's no corporate backing and there's no allegiance to some anti-American agenda.
How dare you come to this peaceful community and try to scam these people? What the hell are you talking about?
But rather, it's just good, honest, wholesome content that's based in truth and tradition.
I saw him. It was incredible.
Something that you can actually sit down with your whole family and enjoy, knowing that some ideology is not about to be pushed upon you.
And who's fighting it? We're fighting it here at Epoch Times, and we need to keep bringing you the news.
And so again, if you'd like to check out Epoch TV, just click on that button below this video. You and your family will absolutely love it.